Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Make sure you smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So BLM at it again in the same state they were at it again last year, the state of Minnesota. Just outside Minneapolis, we had a shooting occur at the hands of a police officer in the suburb of Minneapolis. I believe it is Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. We're going to analyze this. We're going to analyze the riots. We're going to analyze if the cop was in the right or if they were in the wrong. And we are also going to analyze the state of Minnesota as a whole and why, even after all of the rioting under the leadership, it is still trending in the direction that it's been. Why is it perma blue? Why aren't Republicans able to make gains? We're going to discuss this. But I do have two sponsors, believe it or not, double sponsor for today's video. The first sponsor is the Rep. Chapman debate, the hashtag Rep. Chapman debate. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. on this channel Eastern Time, I will be debating David Chapman on DeSantis and his potential chances for 2024 and potentially DeSantis's past, also economic populism, and the vision of the Trump movement. I will be debating Chapman here. Hopefully we'll have more debates on the channel this year. It's kind of a slow year in politics so far, but we'll have to see. This is going to be fun. I will be live tomorrow on my channel at 8 o'clock, so be there. And also, it would not be a perfect video if I was not going to tell you guys about my very good friends over at Noble Gold. So now it's spring, and it's time for spring cleaning. The mower needs sorting, the garden looks wrecked, and the barbecue needs some work. You might enjoy doing these jobs, but if you don't or you can't, you're going to need to pay somebody top dollar for it, and that takes money. Let's face it, putting money aside for a comfortable retirement is the only way you're going to get out of doing the lawn yourself, right? That way you can visit the kids, hike that trail, or play golf like all your friends are doing, and Noble Gold can help with that. By investing in precious metals along with your other investments, a gold or silver IRA is a great way of doing this, and this month Noble Gold is gifting a genuine rare Carson City minted Morgan silver dollar with every qualifying IRA or 401k you do. So get in touch with the experts at Noble Gold at www.noblegoldinvestments.com. That is www.noblegoldinvestments.com. So last night in Minneapolis, it was ugly. Things got really out of hand because you had a police officer that shot and killed an unarmed black individual, a mixed race individual, half black, half white, I believe. And as a result, you see this happening. You see people jumping on police cars and vandalizing without really knowing the facts of the situation because they haven't come out yet. But apparently, there's a lot of people on the left that like to use this as an excuse to attack property, that like to use this as an excuse to go riot. These people never knew this guy, most likely, that was involved. They're just using this as an excuse to perpetuate the narrative, the false narrative that black people are more likely to be killed by police officers than white people in these same circumstances, which all of the facts and evidence, I've talked about this in several of my past videos, have completely contradicted. The main studies that I've shown that have talked about per the same stop rate, per 100,000 police stops, I believe that the murder rate for blacks and whites is roughly 1.6 alike, and I think Hispanics might even be a little bit lower than that, believe it or not. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but looking at this, you can see here that there's massive amounts of destruction and vandalism. It's mainly a black crowd, but keep in mind there are a few white liberals in the mix as well, probably some Antifa as well as BLM that are using this as an excuse to riot. And the media, it's funny because the media during the Floyd riots, they kept claiming that a large amount of the violence was done by white supremacists, which is just vaguely not true. In fact, it's largely done by these individuals who are apolitical but just angry or looking for an excuse to cause violence, or are black supremacists mainly. So the media narrative is out the window. And as a result, we see the fact that this is being used as a vehicle to perpetuate the BLM narrative, but also it is a foreshock to the Chauvin trial, which is happening as we speak. Will Chauvin be acquitted? Well, looking at it, you could potentially argue that he very well could end up walking. The facts of the situation, you look at the toxicology reports and the fact that Floyd had 3 to 4 times the amount of lethal fentanyl in his system, and also the fact that the medical experts have said you can die from asphyxia, from fentanyl, from methamphetamine, which was also in his system at the time, and the fact that Chauvin had his knee on the shoulder blade the majority of the time, not the neck, and the fact that Chauvin is only roughly 140 pounds, so he was putting less than half of that on his shoulder blade, probably didn't kill him, and he's likely to walk. The jury, however, is very biased. If you look at where the jury comes from, the jury is coming from Minneapolis. You could look at this right here. Minneapolis voted for Joe Biden, the city, by 80 points. Even the white parts of Minneapolis still voted 80% plus for Joe Biden. So the jury probably not going to be super favorable based off of that fact alone to Derek Chauvin. Now, also, keep in mind things like this happening perpetuate that narrative ahead of the trial. It is true that juries typically are secluded. They try to seclude them as much as possible, so they probably wouldn't hear about something like this when it's happening. But if it does happen to get out there, it would just perpetuate the narrative and put pressure on the jury to convict Chauvin in that case, which would be interference of the trial, and it shouldn't have to be that way. So if Chauvin walks, or let's say he gets manslaughter because the jury will likely be biased, or he gets some form of negligent charge, he gets 5 years in prison, there still are likely going to be a lot of riots, and that coupled with this incident kind of confirms that fact and confirms the fact that we are going to see that happen, and it's going to lead to more destruction. And Joe Biden specifically said that any violence that happens under a president's watch back in 2020 is the president's fault. So by that logic, I guess Biden has to take part of the blame for this, even though it's not really his fault. But he is a very, very weak leader and will do nothing to stop this. Biden doesn't have the guts to come out and say, oh, trust the courts, trust the process. Apparently, that's what they do when it's somebody like Trump who gets his lawsuits thrown in the garbage by his political adversaries. But when it comes down to a liberal jury, if they vote to acquit, no, they happen to be racist because they just look at the facts too much, that disregards the main narrative at hand that's being hammered into people's heads. And what's it going to do? It's going to cause more unrest because people like Biden, the establishment, the elites, they don't care about unrest. They weaponize unrest as a boon to their causes when it fits their specific narrative. Now, was this shooting that happened in Minneapolis justified? I really don't think it was necessarily, but they were both in the wrong. First of all, the guy resisted arrest. He was getting arrested. Then he gets back into his car. I believe he was reaching for something. It doesn't seem like he was reaching for a weapon. There's no confirmation that he had a weapon. I don't believe he did. But the cop saw he was acting erratic, decided to tase him, said, I'm going to tase you on the body cam footage, and instead pulled out a gun and shot him, and was very surprised to find out that she shot him. Now, first of all, don't resist arrest. If Daunte Wright did not resist arrest, he would not have been killed. Now, I don't believe resisting arrest is necessarily a death sentence, but it can easily lead to that because sometimes cops are not that good and don't do their job correctly. So that's step 2. If you're going to be a cop, be competent, okay? Know what weapon you're using because it can cost somebody their life. 3, obviously, it could be that in that situation, Wright's erratic behavior caused the officer to act in a state of excited delirium and cloud the officer's judgment. We'll have to wait and see what happens in court after that. But also, step 4, it was avoidable for both parties. But again, it had nothing to do with race. There's no proof that it had anything to do with race. They seemed to comply with the guy at the start. It did get out of hand, and as a result, it is absolutely a tragedy, the fact that the cop decided to try to tase the guy, but instead shot the guy. So, step 1, don't resist arrest. That is the biggest thing here. Obviously, you don't want to resist arrest because it can lead to a fatal situation. You can argue your case in court. Argue it in court. If you are in the right, you will win there. You're not going to win by resisting arrest. You're not going to get away from the police. It almost never works, especially in this country where police force relatively top of the line. It's also funny that the people that, ironically enough, say, defund the police, they're the same people that are saying we need better police training. Yeah, you're not going to get better police training by defunding the police, okay? It's not going to happen whatsoever. Keep in mind the officer was in the wrong, I believe. And you got to be incompetent to mistake a pistol for taser. This is a tweet from Vince Dow. He was on our stream a couple of streams ago, I believe. He says, which really makes me wonder how she was on the force to begin with. And then he says, I'm speculating, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's the product of diversity hiring, didn't want to fire her because it could be considered sexist. Yeah, it's called we do a little bit of oppression Olympics. Absolutely. I really feel like that could be the case in this particular situation. Obviously, we know things like police departments and fire departments specifically have tried to hire a specific amount of women. And when you hire a specific amount of a certain group, that you're hiring them based off of their identity, not based off of their skill set. If you're, hiring more women police officers that are incompetent just to have more women, that is not good for the greater good of society, and it can cost lives. And I'm not saying that the woman was hired specifically because she was a woman, but we know in the past that police departments and fire departments and many parts of the military have done this. And if you're hiring somebody not based off of their skill set, it will lead to a massive underperformance of that person in their particular field, whether it's being in the military, serving on a board of a corporation, or whether it is a police officer. So it is very important that we do keep that in mind. Now, can women be police officers? Yes, it is possible. But affirmative action, it's not good, and it can lower the quality of the police force. So lastly, I wanted to talk about Minnesota. These people that have their places burned to the ground in the Minneapolis area decided to move vastly to the left in the 2020 election cycle and are still voting heavily for the Democrat Party, mainly white areas in the suburban Midwest that are doing this. And why is it? Well, it's a mix of cultural issues. Minnesota has been weird when it comes to this. They even voted for Mondale over Reagan in 1984. Now, obviously, if Mondale was from Wisconsin instead of Minnesota, Minnesota likely would have gone red. It barely went for Mondale. But keep in mind, it's historically been a very weird and unique state, has not gone red since 1972, and I think a lot of people just don't care. You have this brainwashed white liberal type of mindset that says, okay, I'll give you my house. You can burn my house down. I'm so sorry for being white. Too many people have that mindset, and it's not a good mindset because it is destroying our country and destroying the morale of the majority of the society, whether it's Christians, whether it's men, whether it's whites, specifically what Marxists do in order to gain power, and they've been doing a fairly good job in the state of Minnesota, especially in Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, where Ilhan Omar is the representative. This is where it took place. The district is like 60% non-Hispanic white, too. And that's partially why the state of Minnesota, despite, demography, look at it, it's, red in the rural areas. The rural areas are getting redder. The change from 2016 was even red in a lot of the rural counties. However, in the 2020 election, it's controlled by Hennepin County and a little bit by Ramsey County as well, of some of the other suburbs. But you look at the racial breakdown of the electorate, Joe Biden won white voters in Minnesota. White guilt in those suburbs runs very strong, and I don't know where the breaking point is, because in Wisconsin, because of the Jacob Blake riots, Kenosha actually took a very sharp turn to the right. It voted 3 points more to the right than it did in 2016. That's a national trend of about 5 points to the right in Kenosha County. Racine County really didn't move at all, but Minnesota, all these counties move vastly to the left. Very strange. Also, keep in mind, when you break it down by education, white college voters voted for Joe Biden in the state of Minnesota by 21 points. 21 points. That is even to the left of Romney in the state. That's probably even more liberal than the result that McCain got in the state. I think Bush is probably the last candidate to win white college-educated voters in the state of Minnesota. So white guilt runs strong. And critical race theory, that's a big part of it in the education system, and that definitely needs to be rooted out. But the Republicans don't really have any high-profile people that can run and win in Minnesota. As a result, they haven't had that for years. You could have said Mike Lindell could have been that guy, unique businessman, the type that would do well in the state, but he's kind of all thrown that away with lunatic conspiracy theories that say that Trump is going to be back in the White House in August, and we know that's not going to happen. As much as you may want it to be the case, it's just not going to happen. So it's sad that Mike Lindell has decided to throw his political future away for that, but what can I say? It's not really my business, but either way, Minnesota, keep this in mind. Now, I was going to do the DeSantis video today. I've decided not to do that today. I will drop the DeSantis-Trump video in terms of who's more electable in what states. We're going to discuss that at another time because I thought that this was more important. Yes, I know it lost my Twitter poll, but democracy can kind of be cringe sometimes, and if you don't read Aristotle, you find that out the hard way. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are in the description below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.